start out, particularly if you're doing something like a home lab, if you're starting off small for practicing, for learning, that kind of thing, it might seem really obvious to go, okay, I'm doing this to deploy this config file, I'll just copy and paste that block into another file. That's nice, there's a low resistance to that, it's very easy, it's very quick, that kind of thing. And particularly when you're starting out, it's probably easier to do that than to go, I'm going to learn what a role structure looks like and how to create a role in Ansible. So you copy and paste. The thing is, some point down the road, you've then got how many versions of that code, they're all slightly derivative, you know, maybe you've tweaked it as you've gone along, there's now a really good version of it in your latest thing. What do? Do you then backport that into your previous playbooks if you need to run one? It brings all these challenges, these sort of problems that you're storing up, not for the time, but for later on. And so this, I've sort of written it down here, every copy is a future maintenance burden. It's like technical debt. You're building up technical debt because sooner or later you've got those outdated versions to go back to. And you really don't want to do that if you can avoid it. So again, this is the kind of thing, I've got very old project directories which I've kept because I just need a record of what I did. Haven't had the time to invest in updating them and improving the principles in which they were done, but I've done things like this where you have the original code, you then create a copy, change a variable in it, let's say, then you add a task, and it just gets into a mess very, very quickly. You can't keep track of, particularly with naming like that I've got there, how do you know which one of them is the most up-to-date version, which is the one that really works? You don't know. So, if you can avoid that, please do. It's definitely worth avoiding. And this, I've mentioned this already verbally, this is the don't repeat yourself, the dry principle. Very important that you have one single source of truth for your code, whether that's a role in Ansible, whether that's like a function or a library in another high-level language. But the whole idea is it's not just about the code or the language or whatever, it's about having this single source of truth. It's about actually understanding where it lives, what you're doing, and what you need to update in the future. If you're going to come back to this and fix something, which is the right version to run? Mistake number 3, hard-coded values everywhere. So again, and I think this applies to probably to other high-level languages as well, applies definitely to Ansible. They are easy to do, right? We know, oh, this is the IP address that I want, or this is the host name of my server. I'll just put that in the task. That's easy. Again, it's low friction. It gets you started really, really quickly. You're doing it maybe for one server, for one VM in your home lab, let's say, just hypothetically. It's really easy to get started. Then you come down the road a bit. You may be adding roles, you're adding tasks, that kind of thing. So you want to reuse it. How do you then reuse it? If you've used the same value, particularly if you've used it in like 3 or 4 places in your code, do you then have to do a search and replace on that? Do you have to think too hard about where it is? You know, is it one of those fragile pieces of code where if you don't catch every single instance of it, the code, you'll run it and something will break, then you spend time fixing it, or something unexpected happens. It seems like a low resistance way to get started until you have the pain of it when it's actually in place. So actually, what you want to do is think about what's going to change in your code going forward and where can you put variables in early on. So again, we've got an example here. Now, this isn't a terrible piece of code because we've got examples of variables up at the front, but they are hard-coded, including a port for the application and the DB host IP address. Now, we won't even talk about passwords in the clear that are in there today, but the thing is, that's great in one playbook. What if this is like let's say this is a development environment and then you want to deploy to production? We know that that port might change. That DB host IP is definitely going to change. And let's hope that the password is going to change and be stored somewhere better than in there. So does that mean you then have to take an entire copy of this playbook, so we're back to the copy and paste problem again, change those variables, rerun the playbook. It's not actually going to help you to do that. It's going to be messy, it's going to be cumbersome. How do you know what's where? So really you need to start thinking about not just using variables, but where do you store those variables as well. So for anybody who's panicking, by the way, I know I'm storing up a lot in production. That, you know, this is the thing, like, it's very easy to differentiate Ansible from, we always think of code, we're going to test code before it goes into production. That seems like a sensible thing to do. Ansible's not code, right? It's an operations thing, it deploys stuff, it's not actually code. The thing is, Ansible kind of is code, and if you get it wrong, it's going to do something bad. You really want an ability to test it. And there are some ways you can test it without necessarily having to have a complete dev set up, a complete dev replica. Well, again, we'll touch on them coming up. But the point is, Ansible is code. It is making changes to a system, to a switch, a host, a server, that kind of thing. You really don't want it running untested if you can avoid it. And the final one, before we get into the solutions for these, ignoring error handling. Now this is one is a little bit more subtle. This is more subtle than the idempotency piece. So, again, if you're running this for yourself like a home lab setup, maybe you don't need to think about this so hard because it's like, okay, this is my server, if I break it, I'll withstand the downtime, I'll fix it. In a work environment, in something where other people are depending on it, it's a little bit of a different story. So what we've got here is we've got a very simple example over on the left. I've given them silly names that kind of give you an idea of where the logic in this flow is going to go wrong. Because the whole idea is actually these commands, Ansible will handle errors gracefully. So it'll hit an error, and its default behavior is it won't run any more tasks on that host. It'll just stop. It'll continue on other hosts if there are ones in the inventory, but it stops dead on that host. That prevents it causing any more damage because something went wrong. You can override that behavior, but it's actually a very sensible default. That's great, except in an example like this, where what we're doing is we are downloading a tarball, we're stopping an app with the idea that we'll deploy it and then we'll restart the app. The problem with that is, let's say that that download is corrupt. Let's say the file doesn't come down completely, or the tarball was never good to begin with, something like that. By the time you get to the end of that task there, you've already stopped the app. So end users have no app to connect to. Play stops executing there because it hit an error. The app never restarts, even if the code was never deployed. So it's left in a broken state. So this is where you need to start thinking about error handling. So, okay, if you get to that stage, and like that, fails because the archive's corrupted, how does it recover from that? Does it prompt the user? Can it actually take some remedial action? You know, ideally what you'd have up here, I think, if I were thinking about this myself, what would I do? I'd have a backup task. We'd back the web app up before we tried to run Tara over the top of it. We'd have some sort of exception handling, which Ansible has built in. So if the extract fails, like it does in this example, then you restore the backup and restart the web server. So you actually attempt some sort of automated recovery rather than leaving it in a broken state. So although Ansible is very graceful at handling errors, you can help it along because it will leave things broken if it falls over halfway through. So just have a think about that flow and what would happen if it tripped over somewhere. So, keeping myself on time because I've got one eye on the clock, addressing the mistakes. We've talked a lot about what not to do in Ansible. What do you do instead? First of all, the directory structure. So, this directory structure here that's on the slide, there's a few permutations of this around. The main thing I would say is that's the official link there to the documentation which advises you on where to go look for the directory structures. Even that proposes a couple of permutations, but they're all in that kind of style. If you adopt that kind of style, you'll be using the sort of Ansible play directory structure that most people in the community use. So it'll make sense to you down the road, it'll make sense to another person who picks your code up and takes a look at it. It basically is going to make sense, and it gives you some really sensible defaults. So for example, your roles by default go in the roles directory, self-explanatory. Your inventories go in an inventory directory. You've got variables in directories with variables. You can even name variable directories when you get more advanced after hosts in your inventory to contain specific host variables. Now, don't worry if you don't know what that is yet, it doesn't matter. The point is, if you adopt a directory structure like this from virtually day one, it's going to make sense to you 6 months down the road, and it'll make sense to anyone else who picks your code up, particularly if you're working in a team or a collaborative environment. We've talked a lot about roles, about not reusing code, about not repeating yourself, about not creating giant monolithic plays. When do you create a role? I put us on a rule of thumb here. This is, like so many things, this is opinionated. This is not necessarily a rule. If you break this, you're committing the cardinal sin. But I think if you have a single phrase that describes what it can do, installs Docker is an example that I put on the slide, or configures SSL, those are generally multi-step actions. How to memorize what a role looks like. If you just know that one command, keep that in your note keeper, then you're away. So for reference, this is what a role does look like, and this is the kind of thing, it won't create the specific templates, but if you run that role in its subcommand, it'll create something like this for you. So basically, as I say, it's very simple. You can have a README in it, you should really, because that way you'll remember and know how to operate the role. But what you have here, I'll come this side of the slide so we can see. The role name is actually the directory name of the role. It's no more complicated than that. Default variables go in defaults. Variables at a higher order of precedence, we'll come to that in a minute, go in vars. Tasks, so the actual things that Ansible is executing on the host go in tasks. Handlers we'll come to in a minute. Templates are great, you'll use them. Files, fast to deploy. Metadata, we don't need to worry about that, probably we're in the beginner space. But basically, this is what a role looks like. And the great thing is, let's say that you write a role, it doesn't need handlers. You can leave that directory out. It won't throw an error. It doesn't care if the directory isn't there, it just assumes it doesn't need it. So Ansible is really forgiving in that way. You don't actually need to be too pedantic, maybe too precise. Now, variable hierarchy. This one, again, you're not going to remember this from the word go, and don't worry about that. There is, again, there's a link here, so anybody, and it, by the way, I'll just say, I know we're sharing recordings and things as well. If anybody wants the slide deck, just, again, contact me afterwards, I'll send it to you. That's not a problem, you can get the links that way. This, again, is all well documented, so refer to the docs, but I put on here the order of variable precedence. This, again, doesn't matter too much on day one, but it will matter coming up further down the road, and it'll actually begin to get quite valuable to know that you can override a variable. So rather than leaving it blank and forcing someone to set it, you can set a safe default, and that's quite a valuable thing to do. And then the bottom one there, the -e on the command line, you can always override a variable because that takes precedence at the top level. So that one's well worth knowing. Group and host variables. So here's an interesting one. I mentioned hard coding variables earlier, and we had an example of code that had a DB IP address and a port number and that kind of thing in it. Let's say that was a development environment, and like I say, you don't want to recreate the code for a production environment. You know, an entire copy just with changing those values. How do you do that? Well, what you can do is you can actually have different hosts in your inventory. That's an important part of how Ansible works. It has an inventory. And then you could, again, you choose how your inventory looks. You could have groups called production. You could have groups called development, that kind of thing. And then in those individual files, so these individual files actually contain the same variable names, but with different definitions, with different values set. So I've called them all web servers, but let's say that was dev and that was prod. In that one you put the IP address of the database for development, in that one you put the IP for production. And when it runs through the inventory, again, Ansible, this beautiful simplicity, it's going through known directory names, so it knows to look in a directory called group vars for variables that apply to inventory groups, kind of self-explanatory. That matches the group name and it looks at the variable value. It's perhaps not the best explanation I've ever given on group variables and host variables, but it's well worth learning. It will serve you well in the future, I promise you that. Now, Ansible Vault. Very specifically, Ansible Vault is distinct from any other Vault product on the market, because I know the name gets reused by other vendors and things as well. This one is worth knowing about because if you start out like I did with that example code, you might have a password in your code, which you really don't want to do. And you certainly don't want to end up pushing that either deliberately or accidentally to a public Git repository. That's just not a good idea, as we all know. So Ansible Vault, again, it ships with Ansible. It's a command, just like you have Ansible-playbook, Ansible-galaxy, you have Ansible-vault. It creates and manages for you encrypted files. So I think they're AES 256 at the moment. And these files, they YAML when you edit them in their unencrypted format. So you write them just like you write a normal file with variables. So you list all your variables in, you close it, and then it's encrypted at rest. When you run the playbook command, you don't have to decrypt it, so you don't ever have to have the file decrypted on your file system. Ansible, you tell it to prompt you for the vault password, you give it the password, it will decrypt the file as it runs, decrypts it in memory, I believe is how it works, and then it has access to the variables, but the file on disk stays encrypted, so that way you're never leaving your passwords in the clear. And one thing I would say, Vault files are YAML files just like any other file. You probably want to put YAML on the end of it to remind you that it's a vars file or something like that. It won't look like a vars file when you do a directory listing. Sorry, not a vars file, a Vault file. So you might want to put Vault in the file name just so that you know what it is, because otherwise you might open it in an editor and it looks like it's garbled.
I'm sorry, just a quick interruption.
Yeah.
If something is opened in Vault, does that stay out of the logs as well? Like is that redacted in the logs that Ansible reads?
Okay, that's a good question. I didn't include that in the presentation. It's not by default, but you can tell it to redact that in the logs. No problem. Okay, tags for selective execution. Now, I'm probably going to need to speed up a little bit to keep myself on time, so apologies if I talk a little bit faster. This is basically you, by default, you'll write a playbook and it runs beginning to end in the order that you wrote it. And that's great deterministic behavior. It's what we want Ansible for. If you end up commenting blocks of it out because you need to run only a subset of it, I mean, I've done it. Again, it's a thing I've done. But actually, you don't need to do that. And of course, then, what are you going to do? You're going to commit that commented out version to source control. How do you manage that? The better way to do that is to put tags onto each task. You can then choose either to run only specific tags, you can choose to skip over specific tags. Basically, tags are your friend for when you, let's say you've written something that takes, because a playbook can take 20 minutes to run, particularly if it's downloading packages and that kind of thing. If you have a task fail near the end, you're not going to want to rerun it from the beginning because it's going to take too long. So how do you get it to just run the latter part again? Tags are the answer to that. So they're well worth doing. Again, they're just a very simple stanza. Multiple tags can go on one task. Very easy to make friends with and well worth using.
Is it worth to tag your rows? So if you have bigger playbook with multiple rows, I usually tag each row so then I can run on specific playback file.
Yes, I would say yes, that's worth doing. Yeah, absolutely.
You can do that from within the playbook, so you don't need to put the tag on every task.
Yes, in the playbook.
Yeah, do the same.
Cool. Okay, handlers. Handlers are another great one. So, what is a handler? Let's say that you run this code. This is perfectly valid Ansible play. These tasks run sequentially, so we will deploy an Nginx config, deploy some SSL certs, and restart Nginx. That's great. That all works. What happens if these are already deployed? So somebody runs this a second time, and these two take no action. It still restarts the web server at the end. It's not the end of the world, but if you've got users who are connected to it, it's disruptive. It's also wasting CPU cycles, it's wasting time that you don't need. A handler looks a little like this. So in a role, it goes in the handlers directory. I promised you we'd get to that later. And basically a handler in Ansible land it's something that is only fired when it's notified. So these notified clauses at the end of these tasks, these will only notify the handler called restart Nginx if this task results in a change. If it results in an OK, which means no change was made, the handler doesn't get called at all, and so the service never gets restarted. The other thing is, you'll notice we've got two notifiers here. So if both these change, it might notify twice. The great thing about the handler is, Ansible's intelligent, it runs it once and once only at the end of the play run, so it doesn't restart it twice. So really efficient as well. Now I mentioned debugging, there's check mode. I'm going to need to skip forward a little bit, but you've got two modes in Ansible that don't make any changes to the server. So if you don't actually have a complete dev setup and you need to run something and see what the code would do, or at least get an idea, you've got check mode, which is basically a simulation. It can't simulate everything is the only thing I'd say. There are certain modules like shell and command where it won't simulate what they do because it can't. It can't know every possible command you could throw at it. But check mode is well worth running. And diff mode, I only discovered that it had this recently. I don't know if anybody else was aware, but it can actually, this is like check mode, but it shows you the differences it's going to make. But there's an important point that I learned, particularly when I played with this for the first time. It's not like check mode in that it doesn't do a dry run by default. It makes changes, but it shows you the diff as it makes the changes. So you have to combine it with minus check. But what this does is, like this, you can see it will actually show you what changes it's going to make to a text file. So really, really powerful tool for seeing what's going to happen as opposed to just crossing your fingers. Then Ansible Galaxy. Ansible Galaxy, if you haven't visited it already, it's a huge repository of roles and now collections. You know, if you can think of something that you might need to automate with Ansible, let's say install a Postgres database server. Somebody's already solved that problem. Somebody's already written a role for that. They're all hosted on Ansible Galaxy. They're all linked back to GitHub, so they're all open source, so you can review the source code before you just run it. You know, you don't want to be running someone else's code without necessarily reviewing it in a production environment. But it's a huge resource. It's like Docker Hub, PyPy, depending on what repository you prefer. Definitely have a look there if you want to look, A, for a solution that will work out of the box, or B, for ideas. You know, maybe you can choose someone else's design patterns to learn from. That's also a great resource for that. A couple more minor things. Name your tasks meaningfully. You can actually create tasks in Ansible without the name at all. That will work. Again, I've done that as a quick and dirty workaround. Honestly, you'll regret it if you do that. Maybe not today, but again, down the road, because what's it doing? Also, when the play runs, it prints out the names as the head for each task as it runs. So actually, if you're watching the playbook run, you can see what it's doing. If you can use native modules where possible, you should do so, basically. So you have modules like shell, command, and raw that run basically commands on the server without the need for any complex modules. They're not idempotent. They are really catch-alls for those cases where there doesn't exist a good module today. Use fully qualified collection names. I have not done that in this presentation. I openly admit that. They came in with the advent of collections. Basically, they mean when you use a module in a playbook, they have like a dot notation in them is how you can recognize them. And they prevent any possible future clash if anybody ever comes up with a module that has the same name as an existing one. So they're just being very explicit. Ansible still works today. I'm just going to skip to the end and I'll come to your question if that's okay. But there's something that I think are a best practice that you should use. And Ansible Lint, I have found that very valuable for just helping me look at my code, making sure it'll pick out silly things like I got the indentation level wrong on that clause. It integrates with VS Code or your preferred editor as well, so it's really, really neat. Helps you find errors quickly, helps you keep your coding style compliant, simple, easy to read. And then finally, if you are using things like roles and collections, it's worth pinning your versions just as you would in any other language. Otherwise, there's nothing to stop an author on Ansible Galaxy pushing, the next major release that completely changes how it works. That then breaks your playbook. So you always want to pin versions if you're using other people's collections or roles. Very quickly into next steps. So how would I get started? If you've written something today that repeats the things that I said not to do, don't just set out to completely rewrite it. If you want to, you can, but I always think don't boil the ocean. Make changes a bit at a time, step through it, set up a development environment, play with things, learn how to do things. Create a role is a good way to start. If you need to automate something, create a role for that, add some default variables, try out some of the things that are in this presentation, and just build up. As I say, if you try and just completely rewrite something you've written from scratch, you're going to probably open yourself up to a little bit more stress. And like everything that I think is here at CfgMgmtCamp, you're not alone. There is a huge community behind this. The Ansible forum is a great place to go and get help. The Ansible docs are really, really good. I rely on them a lot. There is a chat on Matrix you can go to talk to people. And shameless plug for one of the books that I've written on there as well. So there's any number, obviously there's loads of books out there on Ansible. In short, there are no shortage of learning resources. So, keeping us just about to time, any questions? Yes?
One advice to new people, read up on include versus import. Because
I like that.
Tags,
yeah,
that's a big thing.
No, I like that. That's a good one.
Subtle differences.
Yeah.
Just Google it.
Yeah, that's worth. I should go into a future revision of this presentation. I like that. Thank you. Who else did we have? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you why did you use twice the notify command for the handler in the example?
Once on each task.
Yes.
So, I suppose that's a simple example, but let's say that you renew the SSL certificate in that example. So you don't change the file names for the certificate and the key. So the config file doesn't change, but the key and the certificate file do. They get redeployed. You would want to notify the handler to restart because you changed the cert and the private key, but you didn't change the config. Equally, you could change the config file, but not change the TLS configuration.
So either one or another would trigger the handler.
That's right, but whether it gets one trigger or two, it only fires once. So it gives you that sort of and/or function. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? Or I think we're there. Gives me. Oh yes, sorry. Yes, I did promise I'd come back to you.
One question regarding teamwork. When different people are working together on the same code base, do you have any best practices how to handle it? When it comes to, for example, tech teams.
Not off the top of my head, I must admit, no. It's something that might be a good one to come back to tomorrow if you want to catch up with me offline. Not to duck the question, but I need to also run up to my next presentation on the third floor. But please come find me if you want to chat, and the same goes to anyone else in this room. If you want to ask anything else or have a chat, come find me, I'll be around. Thank you. Thank you.
Good talk. Thank you very much. Thanks for the talk. Thank you. Good luck. Thank you very much.
Yes, we have so, and we have our our Ansible company, so I know I'm not good at it. So I have taken on, you're going to
You got it. Yeah, it works.
yeah, it would be nice if you build the,
Yeah, I have a one more question Okay. Easy man. Good luck at the next one. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, James.
You're welcome. Thank you. Oh, hey man.
told you so. No,
Grab a bottle of water, I'm going to need that for the next one. Leave anything today? No, we're good.
Right, good luck. Thanks man. No. I'll be good. Oh, cool. Remain. Ex-Rander! Yay! Let me get the screen to out.
Yes.
Let me see if we're. No, that's not the full one. Let me fix that. Think that will do?
Maybe switch them around.
No,
You've got one presentation in the other room.
I'll just.
Okay, we can do a unfortunate fallback of using GNOME.
Yay.
So I don't think staring at Xrander commands will excite people too much.
Well, I haven't tried it.
Don't worry.
I'm also excited to see that it still doesn't work.
Yes.
And GNOME does.
Yeah.
Okay. When Daniel is preparing, I would like all of you to actually get note of this HackMD. Please collaborate over here. Whatever questions you have some ideas, any discussions you want to have about Ansible, about the topics in general, you can collaborate and share your ideas over here. Please do that. That would be wonderful. Also, we have, if you're a part of Mastodon, we have a Mastodon Ansible community in Fostodon, and also we do have LinkedIn. If you want to share about the sessions, that would be wonderful as well. So, without further ado, so I would like to introduce Daniel. So, I'm very, as I said, that I want to take the opportunity of being a little Ansible selfish So I would like. So Daniel says that he largely gives credit to Ansible with pushing him towards the towards being more towards more interesting problems. He has discovered it 9 years ago, I think.
Now it's 10.
10. Oh.
Round number.
When he was in the first year of high school, that's impressive. And while he was trying to solve some troubles in the computer class, especially the Linux classroom, I think. Now he tinkers with infrastructure, development from kernel to the browser, and many more. So, Daniel, the stage is yours.
Awesome.
And Daniel is going to take questions after his session. So, please be ready with your questions.
All right. I think I've got the screen figured out, so let me fire that up. And presentation HTML is about to appear. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh wait, but still doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Oh, that now it fits. Perfect. Cool. Whoops. You'll have to forgive me being clumsy around GNOME. I haven't used it in a while. Okay, welcome everyone. So today we're going to chat about building a self-contained zero dependency deployment with Ansible. First, let me just give you a bit of a background on who am I, because it will kind of come into context here. Yeah, I've been using Ansible. This year marks a decade. First time I used it was actually in a classroom. I first was trying to set the wallpaper to something funny across all the machines, and the problem I faced with all the other tools were very inadequate. So I don't know if any of you have encountered an early attempt called Parallel SSH. What it did is you would spawn a terminal and duplicate it across, for example, 10 machines. But if a command returned an error or one, you would be out of drift, because when you would be typing on the keyboard, it would be just duplicating the characters across. So I thought there must be something better, and I found Ansible really quickly after that. And from there, it kind of just started this journey, and I like to joke around that it saved me from probably becoming a front-end developer, which would be a very sad fate. So I'm very happy to have run into Ansible, because it got me interested in Linux and in system administration, and it kind of shaped things for me from there. Currently, I mostly work in the Kubernetes ecosystem, but I still do a lot of Ansible work, mostly consulting around in my spare time from my day job. So that's more or less about me. And now we're going to talk about the plan for this talk, so you know what you'll get out of it. So I'm going to show you a real case from a real customer I've had that I've convinced to open source this, where they needed an installer. And I will give you a bit of background on where it applies, so you know where it might fit your use case, where it might not fit your use case, because it fits a very specific, very niche need. Then I'm going to give you a high-level overview how you interact with it as a user, what you get, the experience that you get, and then we're going to get into the details of how we actually achieve the thing. So, the problem. A while ago, I was working with a startup that's basically based on top of a container platform. So what they need to do is they need to provision a lot of things, they need to configure quite a big stack, but they don't know where they ship. So they have some customers that have 50 machines, for example, they've barely used Linux, and they need to install some solution. I'm being vague just to not distract with the details of it. The point is, we need to ship to some environment. We don't know what we'll get. We don't know what Linux distribution we're getting. We don't know if there's Ansible available. We don't know if we have internet access, which is another fun challenge. So we have to solve for all of this, and this needs to be shippable to customers. So that's essentially how... Oh, I forgot the most important part. Should I run back a short bit?
No,
we're good.
Picked it up, but you can put it on your...
Like that?
Yeah. Take it out for first problem.
Cool. Alright, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah, we're good.
Alright, so let's carry on. So yeah, that's what we had to solve for. and I'm going to show you around how we did that. So here's how it works. If you're a user, you get a single executable, which has Ansible and all your dependencies. You don't need Ansible in your host system. Your playbooks, your roles, anything you want to deploy, it's inside this. And as a user, you run sudo, my executable, everything's configured. You don't need Python on the host system. You don't need anything. As long as it's a Linux machine, you're good. So first I'm going to show a little bit how it works, just do a short run of it, and then we're going to see inside the tool what it's doing. So I have a machine. Let me open it up real quick and get you a terminal here. Oops. I think I need to unfull screen this first. Right. Come on. Right, there we go. Again, you'll have to bear with me using GNOME because this is, yeah. I lost all my fancy keyboard shortcuts and now I don't know where I am. But I'm going to, as I say, show a little demo machine I have. Oops. Hold on, is the terminal happy? Okay, I think it's covered up by that art prompt, so I'm just going to make a show here. Oops. Yeah, I hope that's the right one. Okay, I have two of them because we're going to demo some more fun stuff later. So I'm going to go back and fix it real quick. Here we are. Okay, so I have the pre-built thing. After the talk, you'll get a link to the repo where you can build it yourself if you want to. But I tested the build before the talk, and it takes too long to do live because it needs to download a bunch of stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to run our little self-contained Ansible demo. And for now, what I'll have it do is I'll just have it create some files, copy some things around. So you can see we're in an Ansible playbook now. And it copied some files, copied example.com to /temp. So I can see now I do have example.html. But more importantly, if I check if I have Ansible on this host, I do not. If I check if I have maybe some containers, I do not. So, whoops, what did I do?
Oh, you just got some standard stuff.
Yeah. So there's no Podman, no Docker, nothing like that. No cards up my sleeve, no coins hidden in the sleeves. It's not a magic trick. So this is the user experience. You can do that air-gapped. You can do that in a bunker underground. Obviously, then this install will get quite sizable because it's not magic. It has to carry the files around. So now I'm going to go back to the slides. There we go. And let's bring that back. Full screen. I'm going to just get that closed somehow. Let me just refresh. Oh. Okay. I will quickly. Yeah. Okay, we're going to go back to where we are. Yeah. So, how this works is this is a tarball. As you might guess, we have to package all the dependencies, including Python, Ansible, the playbooks. All of that is sitting inside a big tarball. And the magic trick that we're performing is Linux has got some ways to get to where the root file system is, as from the perspective of a process. And this is often used in containerization to trick it and say, hey, you're not allowed to go outside of something, but we can also use it unrestricted. And we can, into our tarball, mount PID1, and PID1 sees your file system. So what we're doing is we're unpacking our tarball somewhere, we're putting PID1 inside of it, which is your system's first init process. This has knowledge of your host machine outside the tarball. And then from the tarball's perspective, we're going to use the Ansible Truth plugin. Because Ansible is able to take a file path and say this is a system, and it's able to just go in and run your playbook. And if you notice the playbook execution, once it unpacked, it was pretty fast because we're not doing SSH connections, so it's a bit faster than usual. We are just going in through prods1 root, and we are able to get at the host machine. So this is essentially how we achieve that, but I'm going to show you just inside the installer so you can get a picture step by step of how we are able to essentially get that there. So I'm going to hop back into a terminal. Whoops. Oh. And we're just going to poke around a live Linux system. So just to get you an idea, so the main thing we're relying on is truth. Truth is I'm saying I'm in this directory, it can be /home/Daniel, and I can say, hey, treat this as the slash at the top of the file system. This is what we're relying on. This is the whole trick that we're abusing. So the trick we're abusing, right? I can make here fake fs, right? And if I were to root into fake fs, it doesn't have all the core utils, so it'll get a bit angry at me. But if I were to root into fake fs, I would then be in there from the perspective of the process. Now I'm going to show you from the tarball that we had. It's unpacked here. Ansible fs root. So I can do root this, and you can see I'm in here, right? So this says I'm in slash. So if I do touch slash, I am in an unpacked tar, and you can see this file. But if I exit, so I do exit, you can see it's not here. Well, I'll grab for it because this is not that readable. So there's no unpacked tar. So this is the whole principle we're relying on, just to give you whether we have the common idea of truth. So from here, what Linux does, and what we're abusing, is if I look at any process, I can see from its perspective what is the file system. So all I'm doing is the executable is a self-unpacking tar that mounts this /prods file system, which is not a real file system, it's a virtual file system, which is how Linux presents some ways for you to obtain information about processes. You can also use it to perform certain actions. So this is how many interfaces in Linux work. This is the basis of, for example, C groups. We're an identical interface where you can read things to a file, write things to a file, and interact with your Linux machine that way. So if I mount that in, what I essentially will have, and we're going to do that mount now. If I go to fake fs, you see that prods is not a thing. So what I have to do is I have to mount it. Yeah, but there's also a flag you can do. You don't have to bind one. I already heard the idea from there. But what we've got is if I go into the installer, and if I go, I think it's installer.shell. Nope, it's installer.run. My naming is horrible. So, what you can tell Linux is say mount that fake file system and create that interface. So this is an interface. So when you make an fopen call on this is not going through normal handling. This is going to the kernel and interfacing directly with it. This is how it's implemented. So it implements the same interface as you would have in your file system to read the file. But instead of going to a file, you're going to a kernel. It's like an API for it. We can think of it the same way. It's like you're kerning the kernel through the file system. It's one way to think about it. So we're going to do this. And I'm going to then show you how the rest of the magic trick fits together. Oops. I did something funny, but okay. Mount /prods. That should be it. Whoops. What did I do?
Destination.
Hold on. Got it. Ah, yeah. Gotcha.
Well, you've got the destination, that's all.
Yeah. /prods and prods. There we go.
You need to make the directory first.
Ah, yeah. Live demos. Good idea. There you go. So, if we go into prods, you can see also all the processes running on my system. So those numbers here were PIDs. So this is what we're abusing with Ansible, because we're telling Ansible, hey, from the perspective of process 1, which is your host system, you can see here, if I do ls prods, actually let me root again so that you see it from really Ansible's perspective. So now we're going in to FakeFS. So this is what Ansible sees. Oop. What did I do? Ah, no, it's not FakeFS, it's, oh, goddammit. It's Ansible fs root. Sorry about that. Root. There we go. So in here, if I go ls prod 1 root, this is my root files. Well, my bad. Typing funny. So this is the root file system of my machine. This is where I'm targeting. This is where Ansible is getting at. And in this tarball, before remember I ran where is Ansible, I didn't get an answer. Whoop, I don't have which one here.
Try type.
Yeah.
Type Ansible.
Type Ansible. There we go.
That's in the shell. Yeah. It's a shell built in.
Yeah. Well, there we go. So I have Ansible in my tarball. I can execute Ansible in here. Even if my customer has a weird setup, and this is a case we've hit, we had a place where somebody had a weird version of Ansible where everything had broken. I don't have to worry about it because I'm not affected by that version of Ansible. If somebody's running Python 2.7 for whatever reason still, I don't worry about it. I have my own Python. So this is really a way you can think of having an installer that's kind of very in the style of Windows MSI installers. We have one file, it has everything it needs, it unpacks itself, it installs things, and you don't need to worry about what's on the other end. So this is for if you're shipping some obscure big software, or if you're shipping a small game with some dependencies and you want to do some sanity checks. This is very much in this kind of old school installer sense. This is not a package you would place on a network. This is not something you automate a bunch of hosts with. This is more coming back to the idea of, I'm a kid, I went to the store, I got a CD with a game, I want to install it, and how do I make an installer for that game with Ansible? This is more this kind of old school installer in that sense. So yeah, this is the trick we're using, and from there, you can see here, I have an installer directory where I simply have all my files, and I have my installer playbook. And you can see it's just doing a bunch of stuff. Please zoom out a bit. Or maybe just do less. Let's see if we have less on this tarball. Yeah, we have it. So this is just a bunch of Ansible code. I'm asserting things, I'm running things, but it's a very standard playbook. The magic is more in the inventory. So if I go to the top, you see I have hosts, truth targets, and connection truth. And this is this is built into Ansible. This is how Ansible is able to go to any directory and execute those commands. I didn't have to do any extra legwork on it. The tool has it. And the inventory, here it is. If you've been noticing what we have in +1 root, +1 root is the inventory. So this is the whole how we trick Ansible into running from our own packaging, and this is how we get essentially the installer to work to target the whole system. We're escaping out of the truth. This is also, if you're interested in containers, why there are some very, very specific constraints you need to place around pointing your container to a different file system, because people try to get out. We abuse it for our purposes, but in container systems, people have to do a lot of legwork to prevent it. They actually have a different call to do a bit of a fancier truth. They call it pivot root. But this is an aside. For us, we want the least secure one because we want to break it. So this is how we do that. Let me check how we're on time. We're very good, I think. So I'm going to show you around one other interesting thing, which is there was an extra constraint I didn't mention, which is the platform I built this for, the customer that needed this. They actually run on top of a container platform. So they provision more nodes. So this is how they provision their first node in the cluster. And now the next challenge is, well, I want to provision additional 10 nodes from some web UI that my platform has. So what they wanted to have is have the same base for their execution environment. If you're familiar with AWX or Ansible Tower, this is the terminology for the container where you run your playbooks. And the same environment for this little tower. So instead of having two different steps to derive a tower file where Ansible can run, this is actually directly derived from a valid execution environment. So what I am doing here is I have, let's go back to the repo. I'll go back to bash so the R prompt doesn't look funny. So in the container file, I'm actually doing an OCI build. Let me make it scrollable. Container file. There we go. So this is a standard OCI build, but as you might have noticed, we didn't use any OCI tooling. So this is how we define what the tarball will be. But because I don't want to increase people's SBOMs, because I have a lot of those environments, like I mentioned, people ship it somewhere underground without internet, that means they have regulatory restrictions. If they have regulatory restrictions, anything I ask them to put ahead of the install on the system, they need to patch it. So if I say, hey, I want Docker for my installer to run, I have more problems. So even though I like the OCI format and I want to build in the OCI format, this whole thing builds a container image, but we do not use a container image. What we're doing? Yeah, we are unpacking it with, I have a little build tar thing. I think that's, sorry, there's yeah, build tar should be it. So what we're doing is we are unpacking the whole thing. What you have here is two little utilities that work with OCI, and what we're doing is we're taking all the layers of the image, we get it into a place, and from there we assemble it into a normal file system. And from there we have a tar file, and this tar file becomes the target of our truth. So what this does is it essentially allows me to say, hey, I have an execution environment that I can run on AWX, I can run with all of standard Ansible tooling, I can run it if I want to exec into it directly, doesn't matter, but I also have a tarball that doesn't depend on any container runtime. So that is the rationale behind this. And from there, what I do is I have a very simple script that says build shell archive .shell. And what it does is essentially, you see there's a little demarcation tower payload below, which means I have a script at the top. The script looks at the file, so that the very executable that I'm running is going to run through, and it's going to then read itself from tower payload below. And it's going to move it into a separate file and unpack itself. So I simply have a script at the top of the file, and then everything below this demarcation is my giant tower. And that is how you can make a self-extracting tower archive. This is the whole idea behind it. And that is essentially what we're doing. I can show you also the extraction logic. I think will be in the scripts. Run installer, this guy. Oh, I think we're in the directory actually. Whoops, I did something. Run installer.shell. And oops, that's the wrong gap. So run installer.shell. So it does a bunch of stuff like cleaning up the mount points, mounting them the correct way. This will be made available after the talk so you can have a look around. Essentially, it makes sure you're safe. For example, if you bind mount over your dev directory twice, all your PTYs die, you have to reboot your machine, not a good time. So I've got some safeties here, but just make sure that doesn't happen. But the thing that we're really interested in is, this is the guy, this is how we do the extraction, right? We just match on that line we had in there. So we just say, hey, here's the tar payload, it's below this line, take everything, pass it to tar, and we just extract the file system. So this is the core of how the installer is built. And whoops. And from here, let me go back to this. One thing I want to mention is a couple of other patterns you could use in here. One thing I tried early on, so this wasn't my first attempt. I've messed it up a couple times first. I've tried tar utils. It removes the tar dependency. It's actually, you don't need tar on your system at all, but it is trickier to work with. I just ran into a couple issues getting it to unpack cleanly and then execute. So tar utils, it took a bit of fighting, so I just decided to simplify it and just use this little demarcation line you've seen. There are a couple of projects that aim to package CRUN, which is for those of you less in the container space. What this is a container runtime. That was actually my first attempt because I had OCI, so I thought if I can prepend a container runtime to the executable, maybe this could work. There is a few projects that make it in a way that they build a single executable for you that ships, but they have problems mounting directories in and essentially getting proc1 root mounted was very tricky. And I got it working at one point, but I had to patch a bunch of weird custom Zig code, and that was the point where I decided this might not be friendly to people. So that was there's a couple of things that if they come to your mind, probably a bit tricky to work with, and a bit of a pain. One thing I wanted to do is give a shout out to Juno Innovations, because in that repo, so that repo is just an isolated example for you to be able to look around, see how it works, verify it, you can play with it. But in the same repo, I link to a real CI that releases this. Their stuff is also open source, so you can see how a full container platform makes automated releases in the CI, how they do all of that. So on their GitHub, there will be links to it. We'll be able to find some references for some more production-ready way to solve this. So yeah, big shout out to Juno. They do really cool stuff. If you like VDI and custom environments on Kubernetes, which you can click around with, cool folk. And I've got another demo in case we've got time, but first I want to run through Q&A because it really does the same stuff, but it just shows how those get fed in the real world. So I'd first like to do the Q&A, ask as many questions as you'd like, and then if we still have time, we can look at the other stuff, but you won't get anything new out of it, it's just shiny. Cool, shoot.
Okay, question. Do you know PEX, Python executable? So it's a wrapper over the Python's code, so you don't have to...
Is it similar to how, I think there was a project called PyInstaller, where you make a single executable Python?
Yes, I mean that.
Yeah,
but it does not include the Python.
Sure?
PEX does not include the Python executable, PyInstaller does.
Okay.
But to answer in that context of if I looked at the things that package just Python, I only looked very briefly because the other constraint was it was a must-have to have that OCI image. The reason for it is the platform that customer spawns, it's a Kubernetes platform, as is in fashion today, and what happens is once you run this installer, you get their platform, you go into the web UI, and then you spawn containers to join your other nodes. It's kind of like Portman's AWX, just to get your other nodes joined. So that's why I discarded that earlier. It just, for them, it didn't make sense. They really needed that shared container. So yeah, any more questions? Sure.
I wanted to ask you, you basically used the change mode and mount the proc1 file system. Are there any race conditions to consider? Is there any interference with the file system of the actual root, or if the installation happens in parallel? So maybe.
No, there's no problem. So,
Excuse me, Daniel, can you repeat the question
yeah.
so that it gets...
Yeah, my bad. So the question was if there's any interference from mounting /procs. So because all we do is we just run the Ansible playbook process and nothing else inside, there's nothing to mess with it in any way. So this is not, another Linux host. This is just to run this one process. It's very similar to, for example, if you run a privileged Docker container, it's exactly the same thing. We just run it, but I do clean the mount points up afterwards, and if you abuse that pattern too, that's pretty important to do because /dev is more sensitive, and I did break my test VM a couple times not break, but I had to reboot it by being a bit too playful with it. You want to watch out to not mount over /dev twice. That's the trick. Cool.
You use /proc/root, no /1/root for your inventory.
Yes, I use /proc/1/root.
Yeah, but I don't see how that can be an inventory.
So
there is no inventory valid syntax in that.
So the question was on the inventory syntax, if you can just use /process1/root. The truth plugin takes that in. So there's a truth execution plugin for Ansible, and it works. The code was built from the same source.
ChU connection plugin.
So essentially what Ansible is doing...
Was that in the Ansible config? That was in the playbook. Oh, okay, I missed that.
Yeah, so what Ansible is configured.
Do that again, please.
Yeah, I can show it. So what we've got... Oops. Oh, sorry, I hit wrong shortcut. Here we go.
Chatting with the organizer.
Oops. Here we are. So we've got the installer. Oh, let me just do it for less so we can navigate. Play from VI. Installer playbook to YAML. And in here you can see we have host is truth target, connection truth. This is essentially telling it, hey, use the truth plugin that Ansible has built in. How it works under the hood, I have no idea. The fine folk at Ansible have done a really good job, and it just worked first try. So I was very delighted to find it. And the inventory. Oops.
So you can run Ansible inventory.
Oh, I should be able to. Yes. Yeah. There you go. Truth targets. /1/root. So in theory you could have multiple, but I don't know why we would. But you can. Yeah. Does anyone have any other questions? Sure.
Do you have any concerns about libc or kernel compatibility?
Not really. Anything modern enough will work. The only distinction is we have to do multi-architecture builds if we want to handle ARM. So this is a bit of a pain. In case any of you run into a use case for it, also feel free to ping me after the talk. I've got some tooling that I experimented with, and I can share with you what worked. For this particular installer at the moment is AMD64 only, and the one referenced in the customer case. They also, their platform, the way they ship it, they do have multi-image builds. So if you're interested in that, we can also chat later. And I think somebody else had a question? Yeah?
So the question is, do we really have to rebuild all the things if we already have a container runtime on the system?
But we do not have a container runtime to start with. So the question was, do we need to really package it in the entire if there's a container runtime? And the answer is, this is what all we're guaranteed is Linux. We are not guaranteed Podman, we are not guaranteed Docker, we are not guaranteed any sort of libraries or anything to manage containers. So unfortunately it has to be that way, because the primary use case was actually installing K3s. So that's where that comes from.
If I want to make my own, where do I find documentation and all this stuff? Was that the Juno or?
No. So there is a more, so Juno obviously doesn't document it as much because we just do it for our releases. But for this, I mean, there's documentation how to use it, not how to build it. For documentation how to build it, you go to, it's linked in the talk, but let me also open it up for you.
It's okay. It's in the talk.
Yeah, it's linked in the talk. You go to CfgMgmtCamp, you find this talk, you have it in the talk description. I will make the repo public actually right after we finish. And you've got all of this, the make file, where you can just run make build and builds. What's up?
You said that you're running this on the air-gapped environments. What about the SBOM and all this security stuff, like software bill of materials, science, images, and so on?
In air-gapped environments, this we just use it to get K3s in. So essentially they use it as an installer, and then all they have to track is K3s. From there it usually comes under management of some other tools. Also for most of actual air-gapped customers, they have their own methods of running Ansible, so they will usually opt for that. This is more just an option for a very rare case where somebody requests it. But to be honest, most of the time all they care is that it runs offline. Actually the ones who have been pickier about what ships with it were the online ones. Weird mix, but okay, whatever people have running the wilds and whatever constraints they have. Cool, so Anybody else want to ask something? Yeah?
You try to, because you say that you're testing it on the Kubernetes to set up Kubernetes. You try to run it in an OpenShift.
No, we only support K3S on this. So the long story short is the platform this is built for, they sit on top of Kubernetes.
Yeah.
They don't really care which Kubernetes distribution it is, but they have some customers that are not Kubernetes experienced, right? So they need some way to enable them to ship this. Because their core business doesn't concern itself with Kubernetes. Kubernetes is just a tool. So this is for those customers who, let's say, have a lot of classic data science environments.
Yeah.
They just want something to run, install it, and be done. And they don't necessarily have the in-house resources and bandwidth to be looking now at deploying a Kubernetes cluster. So this is for those people. But that's one of the reasons why this is so structured so that certain components are detached. Because for the more advanced customers who may wish to run their own playbooks and apply this from AWS, the repo that Juno Innovations has, it provides it for them built in. So you can skip this installer and go straight to playbooks too, where they basically give them options. And that was kind of the idea here. Cool. Oh, yeah?
Just the last question regarding the methodology. If you have a customer who is asking for an Ansible installation after they provide the Linux box, I don't think with any images to be prebuilt that with some sort of paper or something.
Sorry, can you repeat?
If you have this use case, for example, that you have to run in a very restricted environment in Ansible, where you need to ship all your dependencies, the modules, and the code and whatever, why does this customer not go for a customization of the operating system instead with some tools from HashiCorp like Packer or something?
So that's a good question, but for the clients of this, so the way this the customer I built it for, they just provide a product, and people come to them and they say, hey, we got this, we want an installer. So essentially you can think of them as they don't do integration work with their customers. They just sell a piece of software like self-hosted GitLab would be like this kind of thing, right? So they're a self-hosted infrastructure platform, but they do not interface with the customers that much. All they can do is provide an installer, but they don't advise them on their Kubernetes setup. That is the concern of whoever is on the other end, and they can run whatever Kubernetes distribution they can. So I agree with you. That's how I'd solve it if I was the receiving end on the far end, the end user. But we cannot cover that many end users with, we would have to cover too many cases. So this is just a case of it works for the most people. The other ones say we need to do something custom. But the core thing is this is not their core business, right? So like this installer is just a convenience thing. The actual business that runs this, they assume Kubernetes is provided. So this is something where you can get a POC running with one executable, for example. This is this kind of field we're looking at. Cool. So, unless anybody has other questions, how are we on time?
We have a lot of time.
We have a lot of time.
Yes.
We have 10 minutes left.
Cool. Then what we can try is we can try to do an actual full demo of how this thing looks in the real world. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually go to some upstream documentation. There we go, Juno Innovations Quick Start. So this is the customer I built it for, and they have a curl into bash, our favorite pattern, somewhere here.
Oh, yeah.
That's the root.
Of course.
No.
You mean curl by?
Yeah.
By?
Yeah,
That one.
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's favorite. That's why we also provide the Ansible playbook. So essentially, first we wanted to avoid this, but so many people asked for it, and we were like, fine, it's an option.
I love those.
Yes.
And don't download them first to have a look at it. No, don't do that. YOLO.
YOLO, indeed. So let's go on that note. Whoops. Here we are. I think I'm still in the root. Oh no, I'm here. Okay, let's SSH in. And we are going to do this. And we are going to do something like, the product's name is Orion, so we're going to orion.config.mgmt and I'm just going to put that in my hosts file. Let me do it real quick, because the thing will need that. Oops, what did I do? Okay. And I will check the IP in a second. Okay, so this is our name of our thing. We can do example.com. And the password will be super secret. Oh, yeah.
That's fine, that's just fine.
Letters only, so I can't have example one.
Question: when do you need to enter the password before user?
AI built it. It's alphabetical.
No, it's not, it's temporary. TU, yeah. TU.
And we are going to do on-prem K3s. And then, oops, that's the one. So, yeah, this is our interactive installer. And you can see this is downloading that tarball we were talking about earlier. And it's going to get us all set up. In the meantime, let me check the IP of this box. We are on... I cannot see.
8.9 something is that.
Yeah, let me check. Oops. I think it was... Yeah, it should be that one. So...
You should have made this beforehand.
I had it pre-made, but bridging the VLAN, I had it on local VMs, but it didn't quite work.
Yeah, you changed it on the fly.
Yeah, so this is how you should do all your demos prepared on last minute.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we know.
Yeah. Wait, where was I?
Request for next year. That WireGuard works through the Wi-Fi.
Oh yeah, I really want WireGuard to work to the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, there we are. WQ. Okay. You can see. I mean, the installer is downloading stuff now, so this is good. Go on.
It's crooked. It's not fun.
There we go.
Cool. Okay. Now, this is still downloading.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes.
How large is? Do you know how large it is?
I haven't worked with the customer for a while. I just caught up with them over beer, but they might have shipped some. So we'll see. I tested it, but I tested on pretty fast internet.
Yeah, exactly. Wi-Fi isn't fast here.
Yeah, but this is not a...
No, this is a
This
test.
is a machine on the internet, right?
Yeah, this is.
Oh, okay.
If this is stuff, and we can blame German hosting providers. It's okay.
That's not.
Yeah.
You have all the whole K3s in this tarball?
Jesus
Christ.
No, but K3s is very large, right? It's like 50 or 60 megs. But the most...
That's a
Yeah,
single
but
go
the
by.
dependency depending on what do you want to add so it's kind of...
but the whole core idea of K3s is actually to be single executable.
Yeah.
But the problem is a lot of the Ansible collections, I think I didn't clean out most of them yet. I have some around to do. When you build this, it's very good to go in with something like NCDU. So NCDU is a tool to visually see your file system, poke around and see what takes up the most space. So you can then add cleanup statements and just remove unnecessary bloat from your image. But yeah, we'll see how fast this goes, but this is...
You have this is OCI image, you can use dive. So if this is an OCI image, you can use dive to analyze the layers.
That's a good idea, because does it also do minimizing, or is it just...
No, this is just for analyzing the size of the layers, the dependencies, so you can see what's going on. And you can give you more details, you can do, for example, the compression ratio.
And sorry, I forgot about the online again. The question was about Dive, which apparently is a really good tool to check out for minimizing the images. But I think we might have just gotten bit by either my connection hanging or something happened at Hessner. Let's see. Oh.
It's doing stuff. It is working.
Yeah, let's see.
Install ATOM.
Copy trap.
Run for a commercial.
Yeah, we can see what it's doing. Installer. I think
Is it the same box?
should be. Wait, 1-1.
Yeah, well,
We don't see it.
scroll up.
But I can scroll up. I'm missing all my keybinds. I'm sorry. I'm a very confused kitty user trying to use GNOME terminal.
Little up.
A little up, a little up.
Little
Yeah.
up. Yeah, stop. L 1-1.
1-1. Yeah. Okay.
It's doing stuff. What
You could try just curl head the Juno Harvard.
Yeah, search for
See
curl.
the size.
Yeah. Could search for it.
The next option will be curl progress.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's from
Progress
Git
would
now.
be.
Yeah, it's on the GitHub release. Are we still good on time? We can, if we got more questions, we can also grab on it.
Type date. Type date for time.
Yeah.
Because if you type time for time, then you get something to do.
So we had a use case similar to this, but we said to the customers, because they said they have air-gapped environments, and they say the only thing that I can accept is OCI images, a long time ago Docker images. So that we packed everything in a container and we were running Ansible inside, and actually one of the steps was also uploading our images to their registry. So what it was like recreating. So the only thing that we needed to is the name of the namespace they wanted to install the application, the registry address and credentials and specific service account in Kubernetes cluster to all the stuff. Long story short, 45 minutes and we had all this stuff for the AI and shiny things.
Okay, cool. I'll repeat it again for the online people because I'm trying to be on my best behavior. So somebody actually had a really good, really clever way to do it, which is to packet the images and upload them to the local registry as a step. To be honest, I haven't followed that. I was just using mirrors all the time. So to the installer, if you do the offline configuration, you can tell it, here's my local OCI registry, and it's a mirror. So that was how I was solving it. But it's also really, really slick idea. I like it to package the images and upload them in. So cool, really cool. Yeah, I think this will run forever, unfortunately. I think I have a head start to blame. On AWS it was fast, and on my local Wi-Fi at home it was fast too. But here I think we're just going to stare at it. So unfortunately, one of the two live demos worked. This one, if you're interested in seeing how this looks in a VDI platform, I can show you their documentation. They have a screenshot, but that's the last glimpse of Ansible will catch. So the same playbook, just so that you get an idea of what the next step is they have a thing. Whoops, I think it's I think it's joining nodes to your cluster. Yes, joining nodes to your cluster. And in here, I think there will be a screenshot. No.
What's Juno effects?
So those guys what we're building is a platform. That's not it. It's a platform for essentially where you have multiple environments. Like you have an environment for one team of data scientists. They have some storage containerized, and they spawn Jupyter notebooks. You have another team. You have people with VDI and, for example, VS Code instances embedded in the browser. So this is what the platform does.
But we expand cluster, bottom left.
Oh, bottom left. Yeah, thank you so much. On-premise. Yeah, there we are. And yes, so I even did a thing. So this is how it would look like if Headstone Internet wasn't doing something funny. But essentially it's performance AWX. The backend I've written for it is essentially a task runner. But that part, unfortunately, is outside of the public repos. But if you want to see how everything up to this stage builds up, for a simple version, check out the links in the talk. For in production, real world people doing it. Those guys also have it open source. Check out github.com/Juno-effects. And I think we can wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for coming, and I hope some of it was useful.
Dit had 2 jaar mee. Nee, already was afgevallen.
On this address.
On this address. Now I was trying to figure out so you can guide me on that.
I can find a few. So you want to write on
Yes,
that?
yes. If you have time.
Yeah, of course. You just put that in.
Hey, good job, man. That was fun.
Ah, super! Super!
Dzięki, dzięki. Dobry, fajny chorób. Kurde, to naprawdę jest dobry. Mówię właśnie, żeby coś takiego, że musieliśmy to opakować i jakby klientowi dawać mnie na drugiego ale później to powiedzieli, że dopytam eksport, trzeba eksport i właśnie import. A następnie powiedzieliśmy, dobra, otwarcie ten kontener, jakimś tam wielkim parametrem, skrypty wylądowałem i on tak się uruchamiał, później żeśmy zrezygnowali z Ansible'a, po prostu zrobiliśmy proces budowania rzeczy i tak naprawdę żeśmy pole dopuścili tam pewne czarki i tak dalej. Chyba największym naszym problemem było to, że tam był Ansible Python i gadanie wtedy, to było kurde 2022 rok, więc wcześniej gadanie z Ansible'a do kuberty było trochę problematyczne.
No wiem.
Nie, to pomysł. Nice story. To było nagrywane, czy tylko audio było?
Nagrywane było chyba.
A, jest normalny opsem, nagrywają chyba. Z czymś takim. Tak, ops. Patrz. Do streamingu.
Bardzo mi się podobał ten pomysł, co miałeś, żeby te obrazy od razu wrzucić do ich...
Yes. Yes.
Unfortunately, this was not because I want to see another source.
Yeah, okay.
I'm giving the talk after you.
Ah, okay, nice.
So, yeah.
Then probably, I think I will say.
Yeah, there's too much.
Yeah, it's
horrible.
Yeah.
Do you know if these talks are recorded? Or?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I think I checked the box so that it can be recorded, but I don't know if it is. It looks like it. There's a microphone, so maybe.
Maybe it's just. I mean, I know that for some of the talks there was like this whole camera equipment and so on.
Ah, okay. I don't see that here, but.
Maybe they're just recording voice and slides or something like that.
I will be surprised. Sprichst du zufällig Deutsch?
Ja.
Ah, okay, das dann.
Dann ist egal. Deutsch oder Englisch, ist okay.
Okay, alles klar. Gut, dann baue ich langsam mal auf.
Genau. Andesha ist gerade noch Wasser holen.
Ich habe sie auch gerade gesehen.
Ah, genau, ja.
Gemeint, sie sind
Genau.
Ah, okay.
Ja, ja. Es wird nur gefragt, ob ich noch ein paar Minuten hier warten kann.
Ah, okay. Das, was ist überlegt, ob man sonst aufbaut hier?
Also, ich hatte das Gefühl, dass das HDMI
Ja,
ist.
ja, ja, das
Also,
wird-
das ist ja vorhin, hatte ich glaube ich, das da angeschlossen.
Okay, dann, ich glaube, ich kann schon mal anfangen.
Ja, das. Oh ja, das ist da durch, ne? Ah. Ich glaube, es hat Webcam.
Ah, okay. Ja. Also nicht die beste Qualität wahrscheinlich, aber.
Wahrscheinlich nicht, aber genau.
schon. Nee, ich hab es nicht eingecheckt. Also das war das Problem. Ja, ja. Ich hab irgendwie Feedback das nicht eingecheckt. Das war gut. Jetzt machst du deinen Prozess schon zum Beispiel das Einzige, was ich hier merke.
Somehow it does not, it's not getting recognized. Do you need to add like yes. Press some buttons or?
Next professor?
Yes, but I'm having some troubles with connecting the monitor. Like it doesn't appear yet. Is there some buttons that we need to press?
Where is this going?
So this is, I touched this, is HDMI.
Try again.
I'm fine, I was just coming to check.
Nope.
No?
Okay.
This is USB-C. Let me check.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'll do. Yeah, I will do. Okay. Yeah.
I'll check the other room. I have some other adapters. Use those.
Okay.
What about the talks? We've got that thing which I've been just mentioning. Yeah, about that, and people to make. I just saw some folks who make some notes on that, so that's good.
Yes, I will.
Oh, good. Yeah. I mean, oh yeah. Don't worry about it. Yeah. I wouldn't stress about it. It's all good. Still having some issue with the monitor. I don't know where he went.
If he's getting another cable,
It's alright, we've still got some time.
Yeah, I will try rebooting to see if it helps.
So there's these things in it, technology.
Yes, I think
These technical issues.
Do you need a clipper?
Are you sure? Because I got one here. Have you got one? Oh, okay, cool, yeah. I'll keep on there just in case.
Okay, so I will go.
Okay, if you're cool, I'm going to head back to the other room. Cool, see you in a bit.
And
right now I just want to fix the problem with the monitor. I don't know what's...
this one?
Yeah.
I don't know if you
Oh,
power.
but then, yeah, then I wouldn't have power.
You can put USB-C power.
Can I maybe try just the HDMI cable?
You can try like this. You can get the power in here as well.
Oh, okay, that's possible.
It's a very loose power cable, by the way.
Yeah. That's I already told. I have never had trouble with the monitor, so.
Let's see if this one works. Otherwise.
Yeah, otherwise I will change it. No, it still doesn't.
Okay. Have you put it in directly? Or yeah.
Can we try?
One of the talks, but I've got the page. I'll fill it in.
Let's see, 50-50. This one.
Yeah, now I see another one.
Okay.
So I can, like,
Weird.
okay, so let me set everything up 1 second. Not yet. No, I mean, it works now. I just tried it. It works. I'm just preparing everything. Thank you. Yeah, it works. I'm just preparing everything before I share it.
Can we try again with this one, or do you want to?
No, is it fine if I do it like this?
Yeah, there's no recording then. Yes.
Yeah, it's like a really unstable situation.
Okay,
I would rather not, if it's fine for you.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm sorry, the docking station probably or something like that. I don't know what's the issue.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah, I did some first work a couple of days before Config Management Camp, as I found out when I was looking at the Git history. But the main work started in the months afterwards, I think. So it's roughly 1 year old. Okay, so I hope it's better now. So the content will be, I'll start with some introductions, give you a history about collection testing, or testing in Ansible as in general, then how to improve on the previous situation, then I'll talk about Ansible Nox, and then I'll give some kind of, it's half a demo, half a presentation about how to use Ansible Nox to test the collection. And then the I mean, have this Q&A point at the end, but also in between, if you're having questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, so who am I? I'm a software engineer who's also managing Linux servers. In my previous job, I was managing a few more. This, at my current job, just a few, like a handful. At home, I personally also have 2 Linux servers, which I'm also administrating, so obviously I'm using Ansible for that. So I cannot really show you any big deployments, but at least I'm using Ansible for some stuff. I've been an Ansible user since 2015, approximately. I've started contributing. I checked the Git history for that. Something between 2016 and 17. Then I started maintaining some more things, mostly in 2020. I'll come to that later. And at some point also there was this Ansible community steering committee founded. I'm also a member of that one. I'm not sure whether you heard much about it if you're using the Ansible package, which is Ansible Core Plus, some collections. The steering committee is mainly working on that one, I would say. Good, collection testing history. So, some time ago, well, not that long, but also not that short anymore, because it's already 2026, there was this one big repository, Ansible, which had basically Ansible, what is now Ansible Core, together with like, I think around 2,000 modules, plugins. It was quite a huge number of things in that repository, and I'm also not completely honest here, because if you go back a few more years, at some point, initially it was a big repository, then things were moved out into different repositories, then a couple of years later things were moved back in again, and then everything was kept in there until 2020, when the big split happened, but I'll talk about that a bit later. Anyway, so for this part of history, it was a big repository with everything in there. And for testing, at some point, I checked actually in November 2016, a tool called Ansible Test was added. That was basically a test runner for all the things that were in the Ansible repository. It handles everything: sanity tests, unit tests, and integration tests. And basically determines which tests to run, it then runs them, handles the reporting, tells the bot what to display. If you ever had an issue, or well, mostly a pull request in Ansible, you might have seen these nice Ansibot comments, which basically listed you all the sanity test errors which you had. Ansible test was taking care of all that. Collections were added first in Ansible 2.8 as a technical preview, and the first version which like kind of fully supported, though fully is always an interesting question, is 2.9. Well, shortly after the 2.9 release, like in early 2020, this big split happened. Until then, there was this big monorepo with everything in there, and at that point, basically almost all the modules and plugins out of the Ansible repository were moved into separate repositories into various collections. Some supported content got moved into supported collections, and there were a couple of community collections, and then there was this big catch-all collection, Community General, which basically got just everything else, which was a huge amount of stuff. I'm not, maybe 1,000 something. Eventually, a couple of months later, we split it up again into Community General and Community Network, and moved all the network stuff into the other one. And after that, I think Community General had a bit under 1,000 plugins. And some of them were also further moved to other places. And in 2020, a lot of moving happened. And nowadays, things are pretty stable, I would say, but sometimes still things are moved. One famous example maybe is Community Proxmox, which there were plans like made 2 years ago at CfgMgmtCamp to start a new collection. Then for a year, basically nothing happened. And last year, we tried again. And, well, we found one guy named Jeff who was kindly convinced that, well, maintaining the collection is a great idea, and thank you very much for doing it. And well, now he's basically managing or maintaining community Proxmox for almost a year now, and now I heard there's a new maintainer coming as well, IAM Lunchbox. I don't know if the person is here or not somewhere at the conference. I don't even know who he is. I just know the name from various places, but I have no clue what that person actually is. Good. Now we have a lot of collections and Ansible core, and at that point Ansible test was still the main testing tool for everything. Ansible test itself, let me quickly, I already mentioned we have three parts: sanity testing, unit testing, and integration testing. And Ansible test does, well, a lot of things, like for unit testing it's basically wrapping PyTest, but it's calling it on the right path structure. Also it makes sure that, depending on which parts of a collection, like for example modules or module utils, they have to target more Python versions, maybe also target Python versions, than like the controller only code. So it basically knows which code has to run with which Python version, and then makes sure to run everything with the correct Python versions. For integration tests, they are basically Ansible roles, unless they have a run.sh file, so you can also do like more fancy stuff like installing things and invoking Ansible playbook manually or other Ansible tools. But yeah, it's a pretty flexible thing, works pretty well. Well, it's also a pretty major and really stable tool, I would say. It's doing a lot of things. It offers various choices of isolation. You can isolate things as virtual environments, which is not that isolated. If you're installing packages and tests, for example, you can isolate in Docker containers or in VMs. And especially when you have access to the Ansible CI infrastructure, which is used by Ansible Core, but also like in the community general and a few more collections, then you can also use VMs in CI, which is really, really nice. There's some authentication happening, so you cannot use it as a regular user because you need special credentials, because you can basically run stuff, and I think Red Hat pays for it, so which is pretty neat. Good. It also supports things like split controller target testing, like if you're testing something on the target which doesn't, originally target and controller Python versions were basically the same. That stopped being the case, I think, officially probably before 2.10, but in, I think 2.11 it really starts to be a difference. You have things like support for different CI groups for integration testing. You can have preparation roles for integration testing. You have these cloud plugins that allow to start sidecar containers, provide variables for integration testing. You have JUnit reporting and Ansible bot support. There's code coverage collection and aggregation, which for all the kind of tests, so also the sanity tests, have a bit of code coverage because they are doing import testing. For the unit tests, of course, but also for the integration tests. For there you have to basically hook up into Ansible Playbook somehow, so that you can basically see which lines of the modules you're testing have been covered by the test cases you're running there. That's something which I've only seen in Ansible tests so far, nowhere else. Then there's also change detection, which is also, especially for bigger CIs, Ansible, when everything was in there, it was really important, because you don't want to wait like 1 hour for CI to run through for every commit. In community general and some other collections, it's also still pretty important because there's a huge amount of tests. You don't want to run them if you change a little documentation string somewhere. And yeah, it basically supports all these things out of the box. Well, when the split happened, the main testing tool for the new collections was also Ansible Test. I don't know when testing support for collections has been added to it, whether it was already in 2.8, in 2.9, I think it was already there. There were also Molecule and Ansible Lint, but they do kind of other things. Ansible Lint is pretty much orthogonal to Ansible test anyway. They're testing very different things. Molecule is kind of similar to integration testing, part of Ansible test, but also there they have different sets of features, so they are not really comparable. Maybe that will change eventually, but right now they are different. Yeah, and so especially if you have a collection with, especially with modules and plugins, not necessarily with roles, then a lot of testing is still done, especially on the sanity and unit testing side with Ansible test. And integration tests is sometimes done with Ansible test, sometimes with molecules, sometimes with both, or I don't know, something completely different maybe. Depends. Well, Ansible test also has some downsides. The most annoying thing which everyone who contributed to a collection who tried to run Ansible test probably noticed is that you have to check out the repository in a very specific path structure. You need to have like an Ansible collections directory inside the namespace of the collection. Inside that, the repository checked out by the name of the collection. And if the collection is not in the root of the repository, either you have the structure inside the repository or you have fun. Because then you have to manually copy code out of the repository to somewhere else and run it there. That's not really great, but I mean, people get used to it. It's kind of okay, but not so great. If you have dependencies on other collections, you have to basically make sure that you install them manually, because Ansible test won't install them. During the migration, some dependency files have been created, but support was never added for, I don't know, many reasons, I guess. But this, also if you use isolation, like in Docker containers, then you cannot just install the collection somewhere on your machine, but they have to be in the same path structure, which can also be surprising if you don't really know that. Then you thought you installed everything, and then it tells you, no, it's not there. And then you have to figure out, oh, it's not in this structure, but it's somewhere else. Which is especially for contributors which just want to fix a bug and test it, it's really annoying. Then another thing is that's more for maintainers. If you want to define a collection-specific sanity test, there's no way to do it. I mean, Ansible core has some core-specific sanity tests. They are like in the tests, or they used to be in test sanity code smell, I think. There you could basically add a test together with a JSON file and which described when to run it, and then Ansible test would run it during sanity tests. That never was supported for collections. And yeah. Another thing is that it's really hard to get new features in that don't benefit core. In the beginning it looked like it might be possible, but after a couple of years it became clear that this basically never happens and never will happen, from some comments which showed up later. Another annoying thing is that if you use Ansible test in CI, there's always this CI matrix shuffling happening when a new Ansible core version comes out, because then you have to add a new Ansible core version to your CI matrix. You have to copy the latest sanity ignore file to the new version and so on. This, I mean, only happens like every half a year, but that's also a bit annoying. And it's usually not so easy to automate because basically every collection has its own kind of setup of how Ansible test is run. And also if you're using GitHub Actions, there are so many different ways how you could run it, so it's, if you want to automate it, it's really hard. Well, so how can we improve on this? At least for the one aspect of running additional sanity tests. In the beginning, in 2020, I added a small tool to the community internal test tools collection to run extra sanity tests. My hope was still that this might end up in Ansible test sanity itself at some point, which never happened. Well, eventually I moved it to Ansible Nox, and then I deprecated that thing and removed it, so it's no longer there. Another tool which came up was by Alexei. I mean, you know him by Rassos. He's one of the co-maintainers of Community General. He invented this tool Underbox, which makes it very easy to run Ansible test, different versions of it on a collection. it will basically, if it's not in the right path structure, it will copy the collection into the correct path structure and run Ansible test there. You can tell it which Ansible core version you want, and it creates a venv and installs Ansible core in there and runs that one. So it's really, it makes it much easier, especially for contributors, to just run something. It also got other features over time, and Alexei is still very actively working on this one. Well, what about the future of Ansible test? Well, there haven't been collection features for a long time. There have been many statements and rumors. If you have been at CfgMgmtCamp in the previous years, there's usually at some point the state of the community, or also at other community events, sometimes they are mentioning that Ansible test, there will be some news soon, but so far I never heard anything or seen anything more concrete. There have been talks about splitting it up into two tools, one for collections, one for core. There have been talks about another team taking ownership and continuing development. There have been talks to just use Ansible lint molecule instead, which, as I mentioned earlier, is not so great because they are not really replacements, but they cover other aspects. A molecule is great, but it's very different from the integration tests provided by Ansible tests. So, yeah. And eventually there was an official statement, or kind of official. I mean, Civil, I guess you know who Civil is. I think I'm not sure what the official role is. He's kind of lead of the team lead for core. He basically posted in May 2024 that, I put in the full quote, that's why the font size is a bit smaller, so everything put in. The important thing I put in bold. It's basically our goal forward is basically to stop adding new testing functionality for collections for Ansible test and move the Ansible test included with core back to only testing core. But no timelines, work, discussions, or architecture have happened as yet. So basically, something will happen. No one knows when, and Ansible test will go away for collections somewhere in the future, apparently. So, yeah, well.
Nothing's changed.
Well, as you know, in my talks I usually include some pictures from time to time, which are not AI generated, but real cats living either in my household or close to my household. So here's one, so you don't fall asleep, in case it's too boring. Okay, another motivation for working on, maybe the big question now is, so what now? We know that something will change, but what do we do now? Another motivation for me was, especially last year, I wanted to get rid of Python 2 support for several collections, in particular community crypto. Version 3 was supposed to be released in May 2025. So basically in the beginning of 2025, 1 year ago, I had like a couple of months left to work on it. And well, to add features like type-ins, you need to somehow also check types. There's some support. You can use MyPy for that. Nowadays there's also experimental support in Rust, but well, if you want full support, MyPy is probably still the choice to go right now. Ansible test runs MyPy, but only for core, not for collections. And simply running MyPy on the repository is also not so great, because MyPy actually looks at imports. And if the collection is not in the correct structure and you are calling it from the correct place, it won't find your imports. And if it cannot find the code that you import, then it cannot really check types, because it doesn't know where the code is or where the definitions are. So at that point I was a bit like, okay, so what should I do? There are like 3 options from my point of view. The first one is to hope that the situation magically fixes it by itself. It's not really realistic, like it was beginning of February. I wanted to have the collection released in May. Just waiting for something random to happen, not a good idea. I could also try to nag people until something does happen, but that usually also takes longer than 2-3 months. so that's also not a good choice. Or the last option is like try to improve on the situation myself, which is in the end what I basically had to do. Well, if you want to do something, you first have to think about what you actually want to do and what the properties of the thing you want to create should be. And for that, here's basically, I tried to write down some points which I had, I think, it's a year ago, so I'm not 100% sure anymore, I had in my mind when I wanted to create a new testing tool. I mean, first it should be relatively easy for contributors to use. If it's a bit harder to use for maintainers, it's kind of okay-ish as long as it's easy for contributors. So especially, there shouldn't be any requirements on like a specific path structure where you check out the collection. That's one of the most annoying things about Ansible test, and not having that would be really great. Then also it should take care of Python and collection requirements if possible. It should make the update the CI matrix step, which happens like every half a year when a new Ansible core version comes out, a bit easier, or even trivial if possible, but it's not always possible, but it should make it definitely easier than what was happening before. It should have kind of sensible defaults, so there's always the question, what are sensible defaults? It should also avoid reinventing the wheel, so it should use existing tools as they are there, if possible, instead of just inventing or redoing everything. And it should also be easy to add collection-specific tests. Like for example, in 2 collections, I have in one collection, I'm community DNS, I'm including the so-called public suffix list, which is a public database containing domain endings basically which are public, and everything below that is private. So it's not just TLDs but a bit more. And I want to basically have a check which checks whether there's a new version of it. And of course I can do something very different, but I also want to integrate it as a test in there, so that if I want to run all the collection tests, this test is also run. Of course, you can always smuggle that into a unit test, but that's kind of abused and not so great. Good. The first thing which I tried was looking at talks. You might have seen talks Ansible, and I thought that they're already using, I also know that several, especially Red Hat maintained Ansible collections are using talks for various things. Talks is also used a lot of in other Python or Ansible-related projects. So I thought it was maybe a good choice. I tried to see how I could get it to do some things without having to repeat everything into the collection-specific talks file. If you don't know talks, it's basically running tasks for you, especially tests for Python code. It can use different Python versions. It handles virtual environments, installs dependencies, and then runs a test for you. And the problem was that talks is not, you can write even plugins, but it's not flexible enough. It's basically, you have to repeat, if you want to do something like copy the collection to a separate directory structure and run the test there, you have to write that every time in every talks file for every collection. So you have a lot of things you have to copy and paste around, which is not so great. Another similar tool is called Nox, which I don't know if anyone heard of you about it. Some of them probably yes. It's similar to talks, but the difference is that basically you don't write the description as an ini file, but you write Python code to describe your tests. And the nice thing about Python code is that you can import other Python code, so you can import a library which adds tests for you. And that's basically what I ended up doing. Basically, I wrote a library which is used together with Nox to add tests for your collection. And then, of course, you can also use Nox to add own tests for whatever you want. And the good thing is that Nox, by employing Python, is flexible enough to do all the things I wanted to do. So my decision was pick Nox. And also another thing is that for some of the other Ansible tools or libraries, we were already using Nox, so I was already familiar with it, which was also, at least from my side, a good point. So the very first iteration, which I checked in the Git history, was actually at the end of January last year. I tried this in community DNS. I basically added a Nox file and added some code which basically added some sessions which run various tests for the Python code in there, like also for MyPy. And especially for MyPy and also for PyLint, you have to basically create a directory structure where you have Ansible collections, namespace, in this case community, DNS, and then the collection content. And if you haven't really checked it out, then it has to create it and copy it over. And I started doing something like that, and to see whether it works, and it worked fine. That was basically iteration 0. It wasn't really a library yet, but the next step was create a library out of it, move the code over there. And so basically my Nox file at that point reduced to this. I'm doing an import Ansible Nox. I'm handling an import error in case you don't have it. That will tell you that you need to install it. So somewhere where Nox can find it. And then basically I'm calling one function which adds a lot of, or several sessions to the Nox file, which execute various collection-related tests. And actually the first commit for that was checked on March 15th last year. In the following days, weeks, I added some more tests, some more sessions, and the good thing is that, for example, also support for Ansible test itself. Running it also for different Python versions and for Ansible core versions. The good thing is that, or in that case, Ansible Nox itself knows about which Python versions are supported by which Ansible core versions. And then there's meta runtime YAML in the collection which tells Ansible Nox which Python versions, which Ansible core versions are supported by the collection. So basically the Ansible Nox can on its own find out which Ansible core versions you actually want to run against. And so you can basically tell it add like sanity and unit tests, and it can just add everything as sessions there without you having to specify explicitly what kind of versions you want to have in there. Yeah, I mean, one thing which was so great with that one is that basically you had to call a lot of Python functions in your Nox file to add all these sessions to the to Nox. At some point, I started a small discussion with some, especially with Godmax and some others, about what to do about this. And the idea was to have maybe a config file, which is read and then integrated by Ansible Nox, and that turned into a set of sessions, so that you can easily describe sessions in a very short way, which isn't like full of stuff you have to copy and paste to other collections, and then basically create sessions out of it, and you can still, of course, add more manual sessions if you want. And that was basically iteration 2. We had some discussions. I first wanted to use YAML because, well, YAML is not great, but good enough. And everyone is already familiar with it. Godmax suggested maybe to try Toml because I don't know if you know Toml. Toml is a configuration language which is relatively decent. I mean, I'm not really a really huge fan of it, but it's also not too bad. Most importantly, there exists a library in Python which can read and write, or actually round trip Toml files by keeping most of it, including comments, which is really helpful because if you want, I mean, some of the, you have to still mention some Ansible core versions or Python versions inside your Toml file. And if you want to have some automatism which like adds a new Ansible core version and does some modifications, it's really great if you can modify this file without like screwing up the formatting or getting rid of the comments or other things. So Toml is, I think, quite a good choice for this. It's still readable enough. It's not as bad as YAML. and there's good tooling for it. And so the Nox file itself reduced even further. I mean, the boilerplate is still the same, but instead of having these long calls, adding the tests, there's simply one line left, which adds, or which tells it basically like load the TOML file and add all the sessions from there. And then of course you can still add other stuff. Yes?
I have a question
Yeah.
about TOML specifically, because handling Ansible, TOML files in Ansible is pretty difficult because there is no parser for it yet.
Yes.
So why?
Well, the good thing is that, two things maybe. The first thing is that you don't really have to modify these files with Ansible. I mean, of course you can, but you don't have to. So from that point of view, it's okay. And second, we can still add tools to Ansible. Actually, in Community General, there's currently a pull request where someone is adding, I think, a module to modify TOML files. So it's coming.
Thank you.
Welcome. And yeah, and the default TOML file, I mean, there's also like a small CLI tool, Ansible Nox, which like creates a configuration for you for your collection. The default file it creates is basically this. It defines a lint session, which by default it has several things automatically enabled. It now disables iSort and black because that's maybe a bit too controversial, or you really want that if you want to enable it. And that's like a documentation check using Ansible docs, lint collection docs. Okay, here's another cat picture. And yeah, so let's try this out maybe as a kind of demo sum up. But let me check how much time actually do I have left. It's not much, right? Good.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay. Good. So, I mean, you might have seen the collection template. If you use that one, you get a GitHub action-based CI matrix, which is using this Ansible test GitHub action by default. If you want to have more tests, you have to basically add your own workflows, which is also, many people also modify the existing workflow, and in the end, every collection has slightly different workflows, which is hard to have something to update everything. So let's use Ansible Nox to do something better. I mean, there's this, you can just install it with pip or pip. I mean, you can also just install Nox somehow. And Nox has some mechanism that you can embed dependencies on the Nox file as comments into the Nox file. And if it finds them, it will basically create a small virtual environment, installs the dependencies there, and then uses them. So basically, you just have to Nox. I mean, you have to install Nox somehow. You can use your system repositories for it or whatever. And if you install Ansible Nox itself, you also have the CLI tool Ansible Nox. Then you can use Ansible Nox init to first create do the grunt work, like to create the Nox file py and the Ansible Nox TOML file, which I showed earlier. And then the first thing you can do is run nox-l, which will basically show you the sessions. And that one I want to quickly show you. That basically looks like this. So, in case, yeah, it's not so. You basically have a set of sessions. There's a lint session, which basically there's a description. It basically calls the code QA and the YAML lint session, and the Ansible Nox config session, which validates the session, the configuration itself. Then there's a box check session. And there's a matrix generator session, which is not, I mean, the star basically means what is automatically executed if you don't tell it what to run. So it basically runs everything except this matrix generator. This matrix generator is especially useful if you add Ansible tests and other things later, because it allows to generate a CI matrix automatically from Nox and then use it. There, I'll come to that later. Oops, I have to go back here. So what you can do is if you just run Nox without anything, it will just run all these sessions. One thing which is really useful if you use -R, it will reuse virtual environments instead of always installing everything again for everything you run, which is not so great for network traffic and also takes some time because it has to install everything. If you use that one, I usually use it, then it goes a lot faster. It just runs the tests after having set them up first. That's basically what I was showing. As the first thing, let's add Ansible test sanity and unit tests, and that's basically as simple as adding this to the TOML file. Basically, you can also leave the include devil equals true away if you don't want devil tests or tests based on Ansible core devil, and this will automatically add all tests for all the Ansible core versions which are supported by your collection to the test matrix. And I mean, it's basically looking at these files. There's a meta runtime YAML which tells which Ansible core versions you are using, and then there's tests config YAML, which is actually strictly used by Ansible test to figure out which Python versions you are supporting. And so basically, it's only running tests for the correct Ansible core versions and for the correct Python versions. If you want to add integration tests, if you want to make it simple and just use the default container and just run all the tests, you can use this Ansible test integration with default container session, which is quite a long name, but it describes what it does. If you just add this part, you basically get the full matrix of combinations of Python versions and Ansible core versions. You can also restrict it, because that's usually a way too big matrix. You can say for which core versions, which Python versions you actually want to test. There's also, I'll add that later, a more specific version where you can specifically specify a CI matrix with more for integration tests with Ansible tests with more details. It's you can basically specify the core versions, the targets, Docker containers to use or the remotes to use. You can specify values or lists. And if you have a list, then basically all the values will be added as different sessions. So for example, here I have a list with 2 elements, and then here I have 3 containers. This will result in 6 sessions being added of all combinations of the target and the Docker container, or Docker image. Well, and then there are also some shared workflows, at least if you're using GitHub Actions. You can so basically this you can add to a repository as a workflow on GitHub, and what it will do is basically run all the sanity or basically all the default sessions here, and here it will basically create a CI matrix with all your unit sanity and integration tests, and will run them separately. Maybe that I can show how it looks like. This collection's right. It's a bit hard to read. Yeah, basically it looks like this. So what it does, it runs the extra sanity tests, but then it also creates a matrix runner. Then when it has a matrix, it has, like for example in this case, there's 25 different integration tests that's running. It has 8 sanity tests, basically, and 8 unit tests. It's like 7 supported Ansible core versions plus Devil. And then there are also some EE execution environments built and basic smoke tests. They are basically run in parallel, like which specific ones these are, they are extracted from the TOML file. And then afterwards it's the uploading code coverage data if available from the other tests which actually produce it. And you get all of this just from this workflow. And the nice thing is that this workflow doesn't contain anything about specific Ansible core versions, so you don't basically have to ever touch it again. Also, what you can see here, this flag, this configuration, change detection, and PRs true. This is a kind of nice feature because it enables change detection for pull requests, which will make it only run tests which apply to this specific pull request. I mean, for small collections, it's not really, doesn't make too much sense, or maybe sometimes, especially for integration tests, you really want to run everything. But in big collections like Community General, if you change one module, you don't want to run tests for all the other modules which have nothing to do with this module. So there, having something like change detection is really, really helpful. Okay, that's basically it. There are other things you can do, like add some more test sessions, replace some, like for example, Black ISO and Flake 8 can be replaced by rough. In the future there will be probably some more things, like MyPy. You can also replace it by rough at some point. Yeah, whatever you want basically. You can, I mean, if you are interested in something which would also interest other people, please create an issue, or even if you're interested, maybe a merge request. And if you want to add your own tests, you can basically just add them together to the Nox file. Like in this case, I think this is community router as. It basically loads like the default sessions from the TOML file, and then it adds another one to update doc fragments based on some code inside the collection. And there it's also using a utility function to be able to import code from the collection without having to make sure itself that everything is in the right directory structure. Well, then also I have a wish list of things I want to work on or others might want to work on. Adding like more tests, especially support for Molecule, because I haven't really used Molecule myself, so I don't really want to add support for Molecule yet, because I'm not sure how to add it in the best way without ruining everything. The other things like Azure Pipelines integration, structured output, improved error reporting, maybe support for non-Python plugins, maybe improve some defaults. There are many things that could be done. Yeah, that's basically it. If you have any questions, please ask them now or talk to me after the session. Thanks for listening.
The change detection, are you just delegating that to Ansible test, or do you have some sauce over the top?
Actually, for Ansible test, I mean, if I run Ansible test, I'm just delegating it to Ansible test. I mean, for an Ansible test, basically it assumes that the branches are called the same as an Ansible core. So it passes the right name for the main branch. For the other tests, it's basically my own code handling this. It's similar to, I mean, especially for Python, it's also analyzing the import structure to figure out like which code files should also be checked if something is modified. For some other tests, it's doing like a quick check. For example, the documentation test will not run if no file has been modified, which is actually checked by the documentation check, and things like that. But for some of the tests, it just runs them every time because it doesn't really know or can't really decide which parts might be affected. Like there's one, you can, for example, like build the collection and feed it into Galaxy Importer, and I mean that one should basically probably always run anyway, because. Yeah. Any more questions? Otherwise, thanks a lot, and see you around later. Another cat.
Great stuff.
Yeah, thanks. There's still so much to do, but thank you very much. Tomorrow morning somewhere. I mean, I have to search. I forgot what course is
Otherwise, she was at my place now. So she went to my home.
Thank you for the talk. Thank you for listening. And also thank you for your contribution.
Yes. Dawn has been a very big supporter of Ansible.
I have some questions for you. So okay. Kind of talked about it a little bit today.
Until for include dust and what something like that.
Do you want to join us for dinner?
Yep, sounds good.
I hate these plugs. And people have already been playing. Yeah, you are nice to I don't like include that and like everyone else. But I promise to my teammates that I've wanted it myself forever, and I've actually I think it's similar like quotes in okay, so people are like, I have implemented it before, and it does, and with I think with the reincarnating.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it. I don't have kids, which helps kind of. Yeah, I mean it's But my wife is also. Yeah, that's true.
Yes, that is also my question. How can you do this? Like, how can you be online all the time? Like, it's like.
I never realized how you guys.
So
that's my main hobby. So
there are 3 people in the universe whose approximate reply time is 2 minutes. One is
Not
Felix,
always.
and there is another person in Mark called in the Python in the Python trademark committee.
Okay.
So within 2 minutes, I'll definitely get a reply.
It's not always 2 minutes.
It used to be Coca too, but he had to get some healthier life choices.
Yeah,
that's 10 years ago it would be Coca. I think it was. It was the same thing, it's just like, oh, dude, you're always on. Like what?
They should. Yes, I remember even replying to me, but I was in London. If he wasn't, and he was in Paris.
Yeah. What are you on?
Yes, exactly. There's someone who thinks me to check what is Felix's time zone. Like where is he from?
At one point, I think Brian was actually doing polyphasic sleeping. So I asked him, and he's like, "Yeah, I did it for a while, but."
What?
Polyphasic sleeping. We're basically like you take like hour naps. You're basically up 24 hours. You sleep just like random, catch 15 minutes, a half hour.
It's just it makes me remember of my toddler and my infant. So I don't know what to do that ever in my life.
Or maybe the do this by choice.
I wouldn't do that. I mean, some people apparently like it for whatever.
If I didn't have a family, I might, but I'm definitely a night owl.
If you have a family, don't do it.
Doesn't work. Yeah, totally.
I mean, also if you have a relationship, it's probably not healthy.
Yes.
Not at all.
Unless your significant other is on the same schedule, which.
Yep.
That's.
Okay, I know people like that. It works for them, but it's really special.
Thank you for maintaining those huge collections.
I
have few small ones, and I know how much pain it is, how much work is needed for that.
Likewise. Thank you. That's probably the only one that survived.
I mean, there's some other
as
people.
long as I am, right?
Because you were involved right from the beginning when the 2020 the split right you started
that's true.
so
Way close to the hotel. You probably were late as much.
And it wasn't much, I think, right? Or I'm not sure anymore.
Yeah, I know, it was a blur.
In the beginning it was like kind of messy, and then everything, I mean, I know that Gunnerload was like pushing comments everywhere just to get CI running and stuff like that, and I also pretty quickly started trying to fix some things and just playing around.
And I think the Ansible test part of it actually did come in 2.10, and it was my fault.
Actually, it was already in 2.9 because
It was
testing with 2.9 also worked.
Okay.
Maybe it came in later, I'm not sure. But
yeah, because we were there was a big flap about like what are we gonna do? Like, you know, we have all these tests. Like, are we just gonna dump them and like leave all these collections untested? And we're like,
no, that can't work. Oh well.
So yeah, I was the one that was like, what if we just like hack collection testing in Ansible test? And I kind of made that offhand comment to a couple of people, and then it was like, so when's that happening? And we're like, damn it! So
just the wrong people.
It was a good choice. And some people probably still hate you for that.
Well, Matt was kind of, I mean, it wasn't hard to sell in on it because he was the same, he felt the same way I did about like, you can't just, I think this whole thing is going to fall apart if we just lose all the tests and say like, well, every collection's on its own. It's just going to be
quite a few things which never really worked. After the migration, it took some time to actually figure out that they're broken and actually to fix them.
Yeah, because that thing was like, I don't know, it was like, it was maybe a month or two from the time it was like, when's that happening to like, okay.
Yep, but it did work. It works pretty well. I mean, not everything's perfect, but.
So I'm really happy to see that you are like, you know, delegating a bunch of those things to Ansible test for the things because that's always been the problem with everything. People, most of the people that say like, oh, we're gonna Ansible test is crap and we're gonna go. It's like you don't know what it does, do you?
It does a lot of things.
And
and replacing that is really, really hard.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like so, just let it do what it does. Like I love, just like wrap it up. I hadn't even seen the other attempts to do that. Like
there are several ones. I mean, like the network collections, they have some shared workflow which runs a lot of Ansible tests with I don't think so optimal configuration sometimes, but.
I only usually hear about it when they can't get something to work, and they're like, why doesn't this work? And I go, look, well, okay, because collection loader.
Then I keep pinging people, like, then I keep pinging people. Okay, something is not working in the network. Okay, I'm not being able to help, and then I wait for NITS to come.
Let's say, what are you doing?
Something is not working.
Yep.
And then it's like, it's a thing that it's code. Okay, go to code. Okay, no, it's not code. Okay, and for the times and it's like crazy.
And they're also doing funny things like running the same test with different Python versions where it shouldn't depend on the Python version. It's like
you're not really getting much benefit there. It's just wasting compute.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Well, somebody else is paying for it.
That's true, but still,
I'm amazed that like that hasn't been a problem yet. Like it's still, I don't know what the full bill is, but it's it's significant. I think just the ADP and the AWS, it's like $10,000 a month.
Just for the tests.
I don't know if that's all of it. Like, it's in like. It's spread across so many accounts now. Like it's hard to figure out. But at least the bill isn't going on that guy's credit card anymore. For years, because like they were like, oh well, we're doing a new Microsoft like invoice-based thing. Like just wait until that's done. It took like a year and a half or 2 years or something for them to get the invoice billing sorted out. So it's just like
so
he had to get
actually paid for that.
Well, I mean, it was on his corporate card, but still he has to file expense report every month for the, it's like, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. They're just kind of like, what are you doing?
Are we live? I'm just trying to figure that out.
Probably. Hello, everyone.
Hello. I mean, I can just quit it, but I'm not sure whether it stops it or
stop streaming. Yeah.
Stop streaming.